What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars, known for his calm, collected personality, sits across from one of daytime TV's most outspoken voices, and neither of them is willing to back down? Make sure to subscribe to Talk Show Fallout and like and comment for more talk show coverage. All right, so the energy in the studio is already different before anyone even says a word. You can feel it. The audience is clapping, but it's not just excitement, it's curiosity. People know who's sitting at that table today, and more importantly, they know how unpredictable these conversations can get. Joy Behar leans slightly forward in her chair, smiling in that familiar way, half welcoming, half already ready to challenge. Chris Hemsworth sits relaxed but attentive. He's smiling too, but it's more controlled. You can tell he's here to promote something, but he also knows exactly where he is. Whoopi steps in, trying to set the tone. All right, everybody, we're back, and we've got a guest today who, let's be honest, doesn't really need an introduction. Audience cheers loudly. Chris gives a small nod, a polite smile. Thank you, that's very kind. Whoopi continues. New film coming out, big action, lot of buzz. But we're not just talking about that today. Joy jumps in immediately, cutting slightly across Whoopi. Well, we never just talk about the movie. Audience laughs slightly. Chris chuckles. I figured as much. Sunny adds, trying to balance things out. We're happy to have you here, Chris. Really? Happy to be here, Chris replies. For a moment, it feels normal, comfortable, the kind of start viewers expect. Then Joy tilts her head slightly and shifts the tone. So let me ask you something. Because you've got this image, right? Strong, heroic, disciplined. But you've also been talking a lot recently about stepping back, about taking breaks, about mental health. Chris nods, yeah. Joy continues. And I think people are confused. Because on one hand, you're playing these larger-than-life roles. And on the other hand, you're saying you need to slow down. So which is it? The audience quiets a bit. Not tense yet, but listening. Chris keeps his tone calm. I don't think those things cancel each other out. You can push yourself professionally and still recognize when you need to take care of yourself. Joy raises an eyebrow. But isn't that a luxury? I mean, most people don't get to just step back when they feel overwhelmed. There's a slight shift in the audience, a few murmurs. Chris pauses for half a second. Not defensive, just choosing his words. I understand that perspective, he says. And I'm not pretending everyone has the same options. But I also think conversations like this help normalize something that a lot of people feel but don't talk about. Joy leans in again, a little sharper now. But does it normalize it? Or does it make it seem like burnout is something you solve by going to the beach for a few months? A couple of audience members react, a mix of laughs and oohs. Chris smiles, but it's tighter now. Well, it's not that simple, he replies. And I've never said it was. What I've said is that recognizing burnout matters. What you do about it depends on your situation. Whoopi steps in, sensing the shift. All right, hold on, because I think what he's saying is... Joy interrupts, not aggressively, but firmly. No, I get what he's saying. I just think sometimes celebrities talk about these things in a way that doesn't connect with regular people. Now the tension is real. Not explosive, but definitely there. Chris sits a little straighter. I actually disagree with that, he says, still calm but more direct. I think people connect more than we give them credit for. Everyone understands stress. Everyone understands pressure. Joy shakes her head slightly. Not the same kind. Chris responds quickly this time, not letting it hang. Pressure is pressure. It may come from different places, but it still affects you. The audience reacts again, a bit louder this time. Sunny tries to soften things. I think there's a middle ground here. Like, yes, not everyone has the same resources, but talking about it still matters. Chris nods, appreciative. Exactly. Joy isn't backing off. But here's the thing, she says. When you talk about stepping back, people hear that and think, must be nice. And that creates distance, not connection. Chris looks at her directly now. Or it creates awareness, he replies, which can lead to change. There's a brief silence. Not awkward, just heavy. Whoopi jumps in again, trying to reset. Okay, let's not turn this into a full-on debate just yet. Audience laughs lightly, tension easing for a second. But Joy isn't done. I'm not debating, she says. I'm asking questions people are thinking. Chris nods. And I'm answering honestly. There's a slight edge now, not hostility, but firmness. Alyssa leans in, trying to redirect. Let's talk about the film for a second, because... Joy cuts in again, we will. But this is interesting. Audience reacts, some claps, some murmurs. Chris lets out a small breath, not frustration, more like acceptance that this is happening. Look, he says, I'm not here to tell anyone how to live their life. I'm just sharing my experience. Joy responds immediately, but your experience is amplified. That's the difference. Chris nods slowly. And that's why I try to be careful with what I say. Joy leans back slightly, but her tone stays sharp. Then maybe be clearer. That lands. The audience reacts louder this time. Chris doesn't smile now. He's still calm, but more serious. I think I am being clear, he says. Taking care of yourself isn't weakness. And it's not something only certain people deserve. There's a small round of applause. Joy looks at the audience, then back at him. See, now that I agree with. A slight shift. Not resolution, but a moment of alignment. Chris nods, good. Whoopi takes the opening. All right, now we can breathe for a second. Audience laughs again. But the energy hasn't fully settled. You can feel it, something's still underneath. Whoopi continues. Let's talk about the movie before Joy scares our guest away. Joy smirks. He can handle it. Chris smiles again, but it's different now, more measured. I'm still here, he says. Audience claps. And just like that, they move into safer territory. But the tone of the conversation has already changed. It's no longer just a promotional interview. It's personal. It's layered. And everyone at that table knows it. Because this isn't over. Not even close. The audience is still clapping lightly as the conversation shifts. But the energy hasn't fully reset. You can feel it. That earlier exchange is still sitting in the room, just under the surface. Whoopi leans forward slightly, trying to guide things back on track. So the film, big action, big scale. You've done a lot of these, but this one feels a little different. What drew you to it? Chris nods, grateful for the pivot. Yeah, this one's a bit more grounded. It's still action, still intense, but there's more focus on character, on what drives someone to make certain choices. Sunny smiles, we love that. Because people think action films are just explosions, but there's always something deeper if it's done right. Chris nods again. Exactly. And that's what interested me. It's not just about the physical side, it's about the emotional stakes. Joy folds her arms slightly, listening, but clearly still engaged from earlier. But let me ask you this, she says, cutting in again. When you say emotional stakes, are we talking real depth or Hollywood depth? A few audience members react, small laughs, a couple of, oh. Chris glances at her, then smiles faintly. I'd like to think it's real, he replies. But I guess that's for the audience to decide. Joy tilts her head. That's a safe answer. Chris chuckles. It's an honest one. Alyssa jumps in quickly, trying to keep things balanced. I saw an early screening clip, and I will say, there are moments where you're not the typical invincible hero. You actually look vulnerable. Chris nods. That was important to me. I didn't want to just repeat the same formula. Joy raises an eyebrow again. But isn't that what made you famous? The formula? The audience reacts louder this time. Chris pauses, then answers calmly. I think what made those roles work was more than just the formula. It was the connection people felt to the character. Joy responds quickly, or the spectacle. Chris doesn't look away. It can be both, he says. There's a brief pause, a small standoff, but controlled. Whoopi steps in again, her tone a little firmer now. Joy, let him finish his thought. Audience claps lightly. Joy lifts her hands slightly. I'm letting him talk. Chris gives a small nod toward Whoopi, then continues. What I've learned over time is that audiences evolve. What they connect with changes. And if you don't evolve with that, you get left behind. Sunny nods. That's true in every industry. Chris continues. So for me, it's about finding new layers. Not just physically, but emotionally. Joy leans forward again, not letting it go. But do you think audiences really want that from you? Or do they just want the hammer and the muscles? A wave of laughter and applause hits the studio. Chris smiles slightly, but there's a hint of seriousness behind it. I think audiences want authenticity, he says. And if I'm not growing, they'll notice that. Joy shakes her head lightly. I don't know. Sometimes I think audiences just want to escape. They don't want depth, they want distraction. Chris responds a bit quicker now. Escape doesn't mean empty. That line lands. The audience reacts strongly, claps, a few cheers. Joy looks at him, then smiles faintly. Okay, that was a good line. Chris laughs softly, thank you. For a moment, the tension eases again, but it's not gone. Alyssa takes the chance to shift gears slightly. You've been in this industry a long time now. Do you feel like there's more pressure today than when you started? Chris exhales lightly. Yeah, I think so. There's more visibility now. Social media, constant feedback, it's immediate. Sunny adds, and not always kind. Chris nods, not always. Joy jumps back in, her tone sharper again. But that comes with the territory, right? You chose this. The audience quiets slightly. Chris doesn't hesitate this time. Choosing a career doesn't mean you sign up for everything that comes with it, he says. Joy tilts her head. But it kind of does. Chris shakes his head slightly. No, it doesn't. It means you accept certain realities, but it doesn't mean those realities are always okay. There's a stronger reaction from the audience now, a mix of applause and murmurs. Whoopi watches closely, letting it play out for a second. Joy leans in again. But you benefit from that same system. The attention, the exposure, that's part of what made you who you are. Chris nods. I agree, and I'm grateful for that. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't question the negative sides of it. Joy responds immediately. Or it means you take the good with the bad and stop complaining. That line hits harder. The audience reacts with a louder, oh. Chris's expression shifts, still controlled, but more serious now. I'm not complaining, he says. I'm talking about something that affects a lot of people, not just me. Joy crosses her arms slightly. But you're the one with the platform. Chris nods again. Exactly, which is why I use it. There's a pause. A real one this time. Sunny leans in, trying to de-escalate. I think what he's saying is that having a platform also comes with responsibility. Chris looks at her, appreciative. Yes, that's exactly it. Joy doesn't interrupt this time, but she's still watching closely. Alyssa adds, and honestly, conversations like this, even when they get a little heated, they matter. Whoopi nods, finally stepping back in more assertively. All right, let me jump in here for a second. The table quiets slightly. Because this is what we do. We talk, we disagree, we figure it out. But we're not going to sit here and act like one experience cancels out another. Audience applauds. Whoopi continues, looking at both of them. People at home are dealing with stress in different ways. Some have options, some don't. But the conversation itself, that's not a bad thing. Chris nods. I agree. Joy nods too, but adds, I never said it was bad. Whoopi gives a small smile. I know, but you push, that's what you do. Audience laughs. Joy smirks. Someone has to. Chris chuckles lightly. I respect that. There's a brief moment of mutual acknowledgement, not agreement, but understanding. But then Joy adds one more thing, almost casually, and it shifts the tone again. I just don't like when it feels disconnected. Chris looks at her, more directly now. And I don't like when it feels dismissed. The audience reacts instantly, louder than before. Whoopi leans back slightly, letting that moment sit. Because now it's not just a discussion anymore. It's personal, and everyone in the room can feel it. The smiles are smaller now. The pauses are longer. The words are more deliberate. This isn't just a promotional stop anymore. This is turning into something else entirely. And it's only getting started. The audience reaction from that last exchange doesn't fade quickly. It lingers, a mix of claps, murmurs, and that low hum you only hear when people know something real is happening. Chris and Joy are both sitting a little more forward now. Not aggressive, but fully engaged. No one's pretending this is just a light interview anymore. Whoopi exhales slightly and looks between them. Okay, so now we're here. A few laughs from the audience, but they're quieter this time. Joy doesn't smile. She keeps her eyes on Chris. I'm not trying to dismiss you, she says, her tone more measured now, but still firm. I'm trying to understand why these conversations always seem to come from people who already made it. Chris nods slowly. That's a fair question, he says. But I think it's also a limited way of looking at it. Joy tilts her head. How so? Chris leans in just slightly. Because people who haven't made it are talking about these things too. They just don't have microphones in front of them. The audience reacts, a few claps, a few yeah voices. Joy responds quickly. But that's my point. When you say it, it carries more weight, whether you want it to or not. Chris nods again. I agree. And that's exactly why I try to be honest about it. Joy presses. But honesty without context can be misleading. There's a small ripple in the audience again. Chris doesn't look away. What context do you think is missing? He asks. That question shifts things slightly. Now it's not just defense, it's challenge. Joy pauses for a second, then answers. The reality of people who don't have the option to step back. People who can't take a break without losing everything. Chris listens carefully. I understand that, he says. But ignoring the conversation doesn't help those people either. Joy shakes her head. I'm not saying ignore it. I'm saying be careful how you frame it. Chris responds immediately. I am careful. Joy leans forward again. But are you relatable? That question lands heavier than the others. The audience goes quiet, really quiet this time. Chris takes a breath. I don't think relatability means having the exact same life, he says. I think it means sharing something human. Joy responds almost instantly. But if people can't see themselves in your situation, they stop listening. Chris's tone tightens slightly, still calm, but more direct than before. Or maybe we underestimate people's ability to relate beyond surface-level differences. A few claps break out. Joy glances at the audience, then back at him. You're giving the audience a lot of credit. Chris gives a small nod. They deserve it. That gets a stronger reaction. Applause builds, a few cheers. Joy leans back for a moment, letting that sit. Then she exhales. All right, let me come at this a different way. Whoopi watches closely, saying nothing for now. Joy continues. Do you think celebrities sometimes talk about struggle in a way that unintentionally minimizes what regular people go through? Chris doesn't answer right away this time. He actually thinks about it. And that pause changes the tone again. It slows everything down. Finally, he speaks. Yes, he says. The audience reacts, surprised, interested. Joy's eyebrows lift slightly. She didn't expect that. Chris continues. I think that can happen. And I think it's something we should be aware of. Joy nods slowly, leaning in again. Okay, so then we agree on something. Chris nods. But awareness is the key, he adds. Not silence. Joy responds. I never said silence. Chris meets her gaze. But sometimes it feels like you're saying certain people shouldn't speak on it. That line brings another wave of reactions. Joy shakes her head. I'm saying they should speak carefully. Chris responds, and I'm saying I am. The tension rises again, not explosive but sharper now. Faster. Sunny steps in quickly. Can I just say, this is actually a really important conversation. She looks at both of them. Because both things can be true. People can struggle in different ways, and we can still talk about it without comparing who has it worse. Chris nods. Exactly. Joy nods too, but adds, but comparison is human nature. Alyssa jumps in. Yeah, but it doesn't always help. Joy shrugs slightly. It helps people understand where they stand. Chris responds a little more firmly now. Or it creates division. That line hits. The audience reacts again. Joy leans forward immediately. Or it creates clarity. Chris shakes his head. I don't think clarity comes from dividing people into who has it harder. Joy fires back. I think it comes from recognizing reality. Now the overlap starts, not shouting, but tighter timing, less space between responses. Chris replies, reality is complex. Joy answers, exactly, which is why simple statements can be dangerous. Chris responds, or they can start conversations. Joy, or end them. Audience, louder reactions now, claps, murmurs, a few gasps. Whoopi finally raises her hand slightly. All right, hold on. They both stop, but the energy stays high. Whoopi leans forward. This is where it gets tricky, because you're both right in different ways. She looks at Joy. You're saying context matters. Joy nods. Yes. Then she looks at Chris. And you're saying the conversation matters. Chris nods. Yes. Whoopi spreads her hands slightly. So now what? A brief silence. The audience is completely locked in. Chris speaks first. Then maybe the answer is we keep talking, but we listen more. Joy looks at him, considering that. And maybe, she says, we push back when something doesn't feel grounded. Chris nods slowly. That's fair. There's a small shift, not agreement, but a lowering of the temperature. The audience claps, not loud but steady. Alyssa smiles, relieved. Okay, progress. Sunny laughs softly, a little bit. But then, Joy adds one more thing, quieter but pointed. I just don't want people at home to feel like their struggle is being compared to someone who can walk away from it. Chris looks at her, and this time his tone is softer. I don't want that either. That lands differently. The audience reacts, softer applause, more emotional than before. There's a pause. A real one. For the first time, it doesn't feel like a debate. It feels like understanding, or at least the start of it. Whoopi nods slowly. All right, now that's something. She leans back slightly. But I'm gonna say this, y'all gave us a whole segment right there. Audience laughs, tension finally breaking a bit. Chris smiles again, more relaxed now. Joy lets out a small breath, a faint smile returning. But even with that moment of calm, you can still feel it. This conversation went somewhere real. It didn't stay on the surface. And everyone watching, in the studio and at home, knows they just saw something that doesn't happen every day on a talk show. And there's still one more part to go. Because what happens after a moment like this is sometimes even bigger than the moment itself. The laughter from Whoopi's comment lingers for a moment, but it's different now, lighter, almost like the audience needed that release after everything that just happened. You can feel the shift. Not back to normal, but into that post-tension space where everyone's a little more careful, a little more aware. Whoopi looks out at the audience, then back at the table. All right, we're going to take a breath, she says, half smiling. Because that was a lot, and we still have a show to finish. Audience chuckles, a few claps. Chris leans back slightly in his chair now, shoulders a bit looser. Joy adjusts her posture too, uncrossing her arms, though her expression is still thoughtful. Sunny jumps in gently. I think what people at home just saw is what real conversations actually look like. Alyssa nods. Yeah, not everything is neat and tied up in a bow. Joy glances toward them, then back at Chris. And not everything should be, she adds. Chris nods, I agree with that. There's a small pause, but this one feels calmer. Whoopi turns back to Chris. Before we wrap, I do want to give you a chance to talk about the film again, because we kind of took a detour. Audience laughs. Chris smiles, just a little. Whoopi grins, just a little. Chris leans forward again, but his tone is slightly different now, more grounded, more personal. Look, the film is something I'm really proud of, he says. But honestly, conversations like this, they matter just as much, if not more. That line gets a soft but steady round of applause. Joy watches him closely, then nods once. I respect that, she says. Chris glances at her. And I respect you pushing back, he replies. The audience reacts, louder now, appreciative of the mutual acknowledgement. Joy gives a small smile. Well, that's my job. Whoopi jumps in, playful again. And she takes it very seriously. Audience laughs. Joy smirks. Someone has to keep things interesting. Chris chuckles. You're doing a great job. That breaks the tension a little more. Now it feels human again. Sunny leans in. I think one thing people will take from this is that disagreement doesn't have to mean disrespect. Chris nods. Absolutely. Joy adds, as long as people are actually listening. Alyssa smiles, which, for the record, you both did. Audience claps again. Whoopi looks toward the camera now, that familiar shift into closing mode. Well, this is what we do here, she says. We talk, we argue, we figure things out, or at least we try. She turns back to Chris. Thank you for coming in and sticking through all of that. Audience laughs and applauds. Chris smiles. Thank you for having me. I knew what I was walking into. Joy raises an eyebrow, playful again. Oh, you did, huh? Chris laughs. I had a feeling. Whoopi shakes her head, smiling. All right, don't start again. Audience laughter fills the studio. The segment begins to wrap, but the energy is still buzzing. Not chaotic, but alive. People are talking quietly to each other in the audience, reacting, processing. Whoopi gives the final nod. Chris Hemsworth, everybody. Applause rises, louder now, sustained. Chris gives a small wave, standing briefly, then sits back down as the cameras begin to pull wider. And just like that, the live moment ends. But what happened at that table doesn't stay in that studio. Because within minutes, literally minutes, clips start hitting social media. Short segments. Key lines. Pressure is pressure. Escape doesn't mean empty. Or it creates awareness. And I don't like when it feels dismissed. Those moments get cut, posted, shared. By the time the show fully airs across different time zones, the conversation is already everywhere. On platforms like YouTube, clips start trending almost immediately. Titles pop up. Chris Hemsworth shuts down Joy Behar. Joy Behar calls out celebrity privilege live. Tense moment on The View goes viral on TikTok. The shorter clips take off even faster. 30 seconds, 45 seconds, just the sharpest exchanges. Millions of views within hours. On X, the debate splits into sides. Some people are posting, he handled that with so much class. Others, Joy was asking the real questions. And then there are people saying, this is what real conversations should look like. Clips of the audience reactions get shared too. The Oohs, the applause, the silence when things got real. Backstage, after the show, the energy is quieter, but not awkward. Chris is talking with a producer, still calm, still composed. Joy is off to the side, speaking with one of the co-hosts, but she glances over once, not confrontational, just thoughtful. At one point, Chris walks past, and there's a brief moment. They stop. Joy says something quietly, not picked up on any mic. Chris nods. They both give a small, mutual smile. No cameras. No audience. Just two people who had a real conversation on live TV. And that part, the part nobody sees, matters just as much. By the end of the day, headlines are everywhere. Entertainment blogs, reaction channels, commentary videos. Everyone is breaking it down. Some call it a clash. Some call it a debate. Some call it. It felt real. And that's why it spread. That's why people kept watching, replaying, commenting. Because moments like that don't happen every day. They can't be planned. They just happen. And when they do, people pay attention. So now we want to hear from you. Whose side were you on? Do you think Chris made a strong point, or was Joy right to push back? Drop your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Talk Show Fallout for more real talk show stories.